Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Dawn, watching the alien fleet approach through the black void of space. 15 years, 15 long years of extended hands, peace offerings, and diplomatic missions that ended in fire and death. Her reflection stared back from the reinforced glass, showing the weariness that had settled into her features like sediment in still water. Captain, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship, Lieutenant Torres announced from the communication station, his voice tight with barely controlled tension. Sarah didn't turn from the viewport. She had seen this dance too many times before. The alien ships would respond with weapons fire rather than words. Another diplomatic mission would end with human bodies floating in the cosmic darkness, and the galaxy would continue to see humanity as nothing more than persistent prey. Put it through, Lieutenant. The bridge filled with the harsh, clicking language of the Zephyrians. The universal translator struggled with their rapid-fire speech patterns, but the meaning came through clear enough. Surrender, or die. Leave this system or be destroyed. The same message humanity had received from dozens of species across the galaxy. Sarah finally turned from the viewport, her dark eyes sweeping across the bridge crew. Each face told the same story, hope wearing thin, patience stretched to breaking points, and the slow burn of anger building beneath forced professionalism. These were good people, trained diplomats and peacekeepers who had dedicated their lives to building bridges between worlds. They deserved better than to die as target practice for another aggressive alien empire. Response, Captain? Torres asked, his finger hovering over the transmission controls. Before Sarah could answer, the tactical display erupted with warning signals. The Zephyrian fleet had locked weapons onto the Harmony's Dawn, plasma cannons charged with lethal intent, missile bays opened like hungry mouths, and energy shields flickered to life around sleek alien hulls. All hands, brace for impact, Sarah ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos about to unfold. Helm, evasive maneuvers, communications, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Zephyrian negotiations have failed. The first volley of plasma fire streaked across space like angry stars. The Harmony's Dawn shuddered as her shields absorbed the initial impact, warning klaxons blaring throughout the ship. Sarah gripped the command chair, watching her crew work with practiced efficiency even as death rained down around them. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, the mission's chief xenobiologist, stumbled onto the bridge as the ship lurched through another barrage. Her research robes were torn, and a thin line of blood ran from a cut on her forehead where falling equipment had struck her. Captain, we need to evacuate the research deck, she shouted over the alarm sounds. The atmospheric processors are failing, and we're losing containment on the biological samples. Sarah nodded grimly. Those samples represented years of peaceful contact with dozens of species, bacteria, plant matter, and genetic sequences that could have formed the foundation of interstellar cooperation. Now they would burn along with everything else humanity had tried to build in this galaxy. All hands, abandon research decks 7 through 12. Sarah announced ship-wide. Emergency teams, assist with evacuation procedures. Another massive impact threw everyone to the deck. The lights flickered as power systems strained under the assault. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the Zephyrian ships advancing in perfect formation, their weapons painting deadly lines across space. These weren't warning shots or attempts at intimidation. This was extermination. Captain, hull breach, on Deck 9, reported Chief Engineer Martinez over the comm system. Emergency bulkheads are sealed, but we've lost life support to that section. Casualties? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. 12 confirmed dead, Captain. Ambassador Okafor among them. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Ambassador Joseph Okafor had been one of humanity's finest diplomatic minds, a man who spoke 17 alien languages and had spent his entire career advocating for peaceful coexistence. He had joined this mission believing that the Zephyrians might be different, that perhaps this time humanity could find allies among the stars. Captain, we're receiving another transmission, Torres announced. It's not from the Zephyrians. Who then? Unknown signature, but it's using old Earth military encryption protocols. Sarah frowned. No human military vessels were supposed to be in this sector. Earth Command had been clear that all contact with aggressive alien species should be handled through diplomatic channels. Military intervention was considered a last resort that could escalate tensions across the entire galaxy. Put it through. A new voice filled the bridge, rough and scarred by years of conflict. Diplomatic vessel Harmony's Dawn, This is Admiral Marcus Stone aboard the Dreadnought Retribution. Break off your current position and prepare for extraction. Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that name, knew the stories whispered in Earth Command briefing rooms. Admiral Stone had been cashiered from the service 8 years ago after advocating for preemptive strikes against hostile alien empires. He had disappeared shortly after his court-martial, along with several other disgraced military officers and their loyal crews. Admiral Stone, this is Captain Chen. You are in violation of Earth Command directives by being in this system. We are conducting authorized diplomatic contact with the Zephyrian Collective. Stone's laugh was bitter as plasma fire continued to hammer the diplomatic vessel. Diplomatic contact? Captain, I've been watching human ships burn for 15 years while politicians back home talk about peaceful coexistence. Look around you. How's that diplomacy working out? Through the viewport, Sarah could see massive shapes emerging from behind the asteroid field. Human ships, but not like any she had seen before. These vessels bristled with weapons, their hulls scarred by battle and painted with the symbols of a dozen destroyed alien fleets. At their head sailed an enormous dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest Zephyrian battleships. All Zephyrian vessels. This is Admiral Stone of the Terran Retribution Fleet. The transmission continued on an open channel. You have 30 seconds to cease fire and withdraw from this system, or I will demonstrate why every species in this galaxy has learned to fear the humans who stopped asking for permission. The Zephyrian response was predictable. Weapons fire shifted from the damaged diplomatic vessel to the new arrivals. Plasma beams and kinetic projectiles streaked across space toward Stone's fleet, enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. It never reached its targets. Point defense systems on the human warships came online like deadly constellations, intercepting incoming fire with mathematical precision. Missile swarms launched from hidden bays, weaving through space with predatory intelligence. And from the Retribution herself came something Sarah had never seen before, a beam of pure energy that cut through the largest Zephyrian battleship like a sword through paper. The alien vessel split in half, atmosphere venting into space as its crew died in the vacuum. The remaining Zephyrian ships tried to retreat, but Stone's fleet was already moving to intercept. What followed wasn't a battle, it was an execution. My God, Dr. Reyes whispered, staring at the carnage unfolding before them. They're slaughtering them. Sarah watched in horrified fascination as the human warships tore through the Zephyrian fleet with ruthless efficiency. These weren't the defensive maneuvers she had been trained to expect from Earth Command vessels. This was aggressive, overwhelming violence designed to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Captain Chen, Stone's voice crackled over the comm again. Prepare to be taken aboard the Retribution. We need to talk. Admiral, I cannot abandon my ship or my mission. Earth Command has specific protocols. Earth Command's protocols have gotten 12,000 humans killed in the last 15 years. Stone interrupted, his voice sharp with anger. Your mission is over, Captain. The age of begging for scraps from alien tables is finished. It's time for humanity to take its place as the apex predator in this galaxy. The last Zephyrian ship exploded in a ball of superheated plasma, its death cry echoing across all frequencies. In the sudden silence that followed, Sarah could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Everything she had been trained to believe about humanity's role in the galaxy was crumbling around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. Transport beam incoming, Torres announced quietly. They're bringing us aboard whether we cooperate or not. Sarah looked around her bridge one final time. The Harmony's Dawn was dying, her hull breached in a dozen places and her systems failing one by one. In a few hours, she would be nothing but debris scattered across the cosmic void. Another monument to humanity's failed attempts at peaceful coexistence. All hands, prepare for emergency transport, she announced, ship-wide. Abandoned ship protocols are now in effect. As the transport beam began to take hold, Sarah felt the familiar tingle of matter dissolution. In moments, she would be aboard a vessel that represented everything Earth Command had fought against: the militarization of human space exploration, the abandonment of diplomatic solutions, and the embrace of violence as a tool of policy. But as she looked out at the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet, one thought kept echoing in her mind. For 15 years, humanity had offered peace to the galaxy. For 15 years, they had received only death and destruction in return. Perhaps Admiral Stone was right. Perhaps it was time for a different approach. The transport beam completed its cycle, and Captain Sarah Chen disappeared from the bridge of the Harmony's Dawn, leaving behind only the cold stars and the growing realization that humanity's age of innocence in the galaxy was coming to an end. In its place, something far more dangerous was about to be born, a species that had learned the hard way that sometimes peace could only be achieved through superior firepower. The diplomatic era was over. What came next would reshape the entire galaxy, one way or another. The transport beam deposited Captain Sarah Chen in the cargo bay of the dreadnought Retribution, and immediately she knew she was no longer in the world she understood. The walls were lined with battle honors from conflicts she had never heard of, species names carved into metal plates alongside dates that stretched back nearly a decade. Trophies from destroyed alien vessels hung like grisly monuments to human vengeance. Admiral Marcus Stone waited for her with a small escort of Marines whose armor bore scars from a dozen different weapon types. He was older than Sarah had expected, his hair gone silver at the temples and deep lines etched around eyes that had seen too much death. But his bearing remained military perfect, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Captain Chen, welcome to the real war," he said without preamble. "I trust the transport wasn't too uncomfortable." Sarah straightened, falling back on her military training despite the surreal nature of the situation. "Admiral Stone, I must formally protest your interference in a sanctioned diplomatic mission. The death of Ambassador Okafor and my crew will not go unanswered by Earth Command." Stone's expression darkened. "Earth Command? Captain, when was the last time you actually spoke with Earth Command?" The question caught Sarah off guard. 3 days ago, when we received final mission parameters for the Zephyrian contact. And before that, 2 weeks, for the preliminary briefing on Zephyrian culture and expected negotiation tactics. Stone gestured to one of his aides, who handed him a datapad. "Captain, Earth Command has been operating under communications blackouts for the past 6 months. Every transmission you received was generated by automated systems, following predetermined protocols. The last actual human to authorize a diplomatic mission from Earth was killed in the Centauri station bombing 8 months ago." Sarah felt the deck seem to shift beneath her feet. "That's impossible. Admiral Harrison was scheduled to review our mission personally. I received confirmation codes, generated by AI systems that have been maintaining the illusion of command structure while the real leadership burns in alien attacks." Stone interrupted. "Captain, Earth itself is under siege. Has been for 3 months now. The Zephyrians you were trying to negotiate with, they're part of a coalition that includes 17 other species, all united by a single goal: the complete extermination of humanity from the galaxy." The cargo bay fell silent except for the distant hum of the ship's engines. Sarah's mind reeled as she tried to process what Stone was telling her. If Earth was under attack, if the command structure had collapsed, then everything she had been working toward was meaningless. Worse than meaningless, it was actively helping humanity's enemies by providing them with intelligence about human diplomatic protocols and military capabilities. "You're lying," she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they sounded hollow. Too many things had not made sense about recent missions. Communication delays that were explained away as solar interference. Mission parameters that seemed designed to put diplomatic vessels in vulnerable positions. Authorization codes that always came through secondary channels. Stone activated the datapad, and a holographic display filled the cargo bay with images that made Sarah's blood run cold. Earth's orbital defense platforms burning like funeral pyres. Colony worlds stripped bare of life, their cities reduced to glass craters, refugee ships fleeing through hyperspace with alien hunters in pursuit. The Terran Colonial Authority estimates that 43 billion humans have died in the last 8 months. Stone continued, his voice emotionless as he recited statistics that defied comprehension. "Entire star systems have been sterilized. The aliens don't want our surrender, Captain. They want our extinction." Dr. Elizabeth Reyes materialized beside Sarah as the rest of the diplomatic crew finished transport. Her face was pale as she stared at the holographic carnage, her scientific mind struggling to process the scope of the genocide being displayed before them. "This can't be real," she whispered. "The xenobiological exchange programs, the cultural studies we've been conducting, none of it would make sense if they were planning to kill us all." "The cultural studies were reconnaissance," Stone replied. "Every piece of art, every biological sample, every diplomatic protocol you've shared, has been used to design more effective ways to hurt us. They've been using our own desire for peaceful coexistence as a weapon against us." Sarah forced herself to focus through the shock. "If what you're saying is true, then why are you here?" Why aren't you defending Earth? Stone's smile was grim. Because defense is a losing strategy, Captain. For 15 years, humanity tried to prove we were worthy of a place in the galactic community. We offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation, everything civilized species do to build trust and mutual understanding. And what did we get in return? He gestured at the datapad again, and the holographic display shifted to show battle reports from across human space. Every encounter followed the same pattern. Human diplomatic vessels destroyed without warning, colonies attacked during peace negotiations, ambassadors murdered under flags of truce. We got betrayal. We got genocide. We got the hard lesson that sometimes the universe doesn't care about your good intentions. Stone's voice grew harder with each word. So we stopped being the victims and started being the predators. Lieutenant Torres appeared beside Sarah, his uniform torn and his face bearing fresh burns from the battle they had just escaped. Captain, this is insane. Even if Earth Command has fallen, there has to be some legitimate authority we can contact. The United Nations, the Colonial Senate. Someone has to be maintaining civilian oversight. Stone laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Lieutenant, the United Nations building in New York is a radioactive crater. The Colonial Senate was murdered in session by Arcturian assassins posing as trade delegates. There is no civilian authority left. There's just us, the humans, who figured out that survival trumps civilized behavior. The cargo bay doors opened with a pneumatic hiss, and Sarah found herself looking out into the main corridor of the Retribution. What she saw there challenged every assumption she had held about human military doctrine. The walls were lined with alien weapons taken as trophies from defeated enemies. Crew members moved with the efficient purpose of soldiers who had seen too much combat, their uniforms bearing unit patches she didn't recognize and carrying sidearms that looked like they had been reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. Admiral, if you've abandoned Earth Command protocols, then under what authority are you operating? Sarah asked, falling back on the legal training that had been part of her diplomatic education. Under the authority of survival, Captain. Under the authority of 12,000 dead humans who believed that aliens could be reasoned with. Under the authority of 43 billion more who died because we weren't willing to accept that sometimes violence is the only language other species understand. Stone started walking toward the corridor, and his marine escort fell into step around him. Sarah and her crew had no choice but to follow, their footsteps echoing off bulkheads that bore the scorch marks of alien weapons and the impact craters of defensive battles fought in the depths of space. You see, Captain, humanity made a fundamental error when we first encountered alien intelligence. Stone continued as they walked. We assumed that because we had evolved beyond warfare among ourselves, other species would share our commitment to peaceful coexistence. We projected our own values onto beings who saw us as nothing more than resources to be harvested or obstacles to be eliminated. They passed a viewing lounge where off-duty crew members were gathered around a tactical display showing ship movements across the galaxy. Sarah recognized some of the star systems being discussed, but the strategic positions being marked bore no resemblance to any defensive doctrine she had studied. These were hunting patterns, pursuit vectors designed to intercept fleeing alien vessels and prevent them from reporting human positions back to their home fleets. The Zephyrians were actually one of the more reasonable species we encountered, Stone continued. They usually bothered to send surrender demands before opening fire. The crystalline hegemony just attacks without warning. The void-touched consider human screams to be a form of music. The devourers see our children as delicacies. Dr. Reyes stumbled, catching herself against the wall as the implications of Stone's words hit her. You're talking about xenocide, the complete extermination of multiple sapient species. No, Doctor. I'm talking about justice. I'm talking about making sure that when this war is over, no human child will ever have to hide in a bunker while alien hunters stalk through the ruins of their home. Stone's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. The galaxy chose to make this a war of extermination. We're simply going to make sure we're the species that survives it. They reached the bridge of the Retribution, and Sarah found herself staring at a command center that bore only superficial resemblance to any human naval vessel she had seen before. The tactical displays showed not just local space, but entire galactic quadrants marked with threat assessments and target priorities. Weapons systems were integrated into the command structure in ways that suggested they were the primary purpose of the ship, not a secondary consideration for self-defense. Admiral, incoming transmission from the 4th Hunter Group. reported a communications officer whose uniform bore the insignia of at least 3 different alien species presumably taken as trophies from defeated enemies. Put it through, Stone ordered. The main screen filled with the image of another human vessel, but this one was even more extensively modified than the Retribution. Its hull bristled with alien weapons systems, and its design incorporated technological elements that Sarah didn't recognize from any human engineering principles. Admiral Stone, this is Captain Rodriguez aboard the Vengeance. We've completed our sweep of the Kepler 442 system. No survivors, no witnesses. The Arcturian colonial fleet has been completely eliminated. Stone nodded approvingly. Casualties on our side? None, sir. The new targeting systems worked perfectly. The Arcturians never had a chance to send a distress signal. Excellent work, Captain. Proceed to your next objective and maintain communications blackout until you reach the rendezvous point. The transmission ended, and Stone turned to face Sarah and her crew. That, Captain Chen, is what victory looks like. Not negotiated settlements or mutual peace treaties, but the complete elimination of threats to human survival. Sarah felt sick. The systematic nature of what she was hearing suggested that Stone's forces had been conducting organized campaigns of extermination across multiple star systems. The humanitarian implications were staggering, but what terrified her most was the possibility that he was right about Earth Command's collapse. If legitimate authority had truly been destroyed, then rogue military units like Stone's fleet might be the only human forces still operating in the galaxy. Admiral, surely there must be some alien species willing to coexist peacefully with humanity, she said, grasping for some hope that the galaxy hadn't truly descended into a war of species extinction. The peaceful wanderers. The Crystal Gardens Collective, they've never shown aggression toward human colonies. Stone's expression softened slightly, and for the first time since their meeting began, Sarah saw something like genuine sadness in his eyes. Captain, the peaceful wanderers were eliminated by the Zephyrian Collective 6 weeks ago. Their crime was refusing to provide intelligence about human diplomatic protocols. The Crystal Gardens Collective chose suicide, rather than participate in the anti-human coalition. Their entire species committed ritual mass death rather than be forced to hunt us. The bridge fell silent as the implications of Stone's words sank in. If even the most pacifistic alien species had been forced to choose between genocide and extinction, then the scope of the conspiracy against humanity was truly galactic in nature. There would be no neutral zones, no safe harbors, no species willing to shelter human refugees from the hunting fleets. So what happens now? Dr. Reyes asked quietly. If we've abandoned diplomacy, if we're committed to warfare against the entire galaxy, then what does victory look like? Stone walked to the main view screen and gestured at the stars beyond. Victory looks like empty space, Doctor. Victory looks like a galaxy where human children can play under foreign suns without fear of alien predators. Victory looks like the end of every species that chose to make war against us. Sarah stared out at the cosmos that had once seemed so full of possibility and wonder. Somewhere among those distant points of light, humanity's homeworld was burning under alien assault. Somewhere out there, the last representatives of a dozen peaceful species were dying because they had refused to participate in humanity's destruction. And somewhere in the growing darkness, Admiral Stone's fleet was writing the opening chapters of a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. The age of diplomatic solutions was over. What came next would be written in fire and blood, and when it was finished, only one species would remain to tell the story of what had happened when humanity finally stopped asking for permission to exist. 3 months later, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned battleship Terra's Wrath, watching as the last Zephyrian homeworld burned beneath a rain of human kinetic bombardment. The alien cities that had once stretched across 3 continents were now nothing but glowing craters, their billion-year-old architecture reduced to radioactive dust that would glow for centuries to come. She had changed in those 3 months aboard Admiral Stone's fleet. The diplomatic uniform had been replaced by combat armor bearing the insignia of the Terran Retribution Corps. Her hands, once soft from years of paperwork and peace negotiations, now bore calluses from weapons training and combat drills. Most importantly, her eyes had changed. They now held the same hard certainty that marked every member of Stone's crew. Final bombardment cycle complete, reported Commander Jackson, the former communications officer who had become her tactical aide after proving himself in the assault on the Arcturian trade stations. All major population centers have been eliminated. Atmospheric processors are deploying terraforming nanites as ordered, Sarah nodded, watching as the planet below began its transformation from Zephyrian homeworld to future human colony. Within a year, the toxic atmosphere that had supported alien life would be converted to something breathable by human lungs. Within 5 years, human settlers would be building cities on the graves of the species that had tried to exterminate them. Any survivors? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Stone's doctrine was absolute: no witnesses, no refugees, no possibility for revenge generations in the future. Negative, Captain. The orbital defense platforms were eliminated in the opening phase, and our hunter-killer squadrons have accounted for all civilian evacuation ships. The Zephyrian collective has been completely sterilized. Sarah felt nothing at the news. 3 months ago, the death of an entire species would have horrified her. Now it was simply another necessary step toward ensuring humanity's survival in a galaxy that had proven itself fundamentally hostile to human existence. She had learned to think in terms of threat elimination rather than diplomatic solutions, and the results spoke for themselves. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Phase 1 operations are complete. All ships are to form up for transition to Phase 2 target systems. Through the reinforced viewports, she could see the massive human fleet that had assembled for the final assault on Zephyrian space. 250 vessels, each one armed with weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien technology and crewed by humans who had learned to embrace their role as the galaxy's apex predators. It was the largest concentration of human military power in recorded history, and it existed for one purpose: the systematic elimination of every species that had participated in the attempted genocide of humanity. Admiral Stone entered the observation deck, his weathered face bearing the satisfaction of a mission accomplished. In the 3 months since Sarah had joined his fleet, she had watched him coordinate the destruction of 12 different alien civilizations with the methodical precision of a surgeon removing cancer. The galaxy's most powerful species had learned to fear the sight of human ships emerging from hyperspace, but their fear came too late to save them. Captain Chen, congratulations on a flawless operation, Stone said, moving to stand beside her at the viewport. The Zephyrian Collective was one of the founding members of the Anti-Human Coalition. Their elimination sends a clear message to the remaining species about the price of opposing us. Sarah turned from the dying planet to face her commander. Admiral, I've been reviewing the intelligence we captured from their command centers. The scope of the conspiracy against humanity is even larger than we initially estimated. According to their strategic databases, the coalition includes over 300 species, spanning 47 galactic sectors. Stone's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction in his eyes. Then we have our work cut out for us, don't we, Captain? How many additional fleets will we need to complete Phase 2 operations? Current projections suggest we'll need at least 1,500 ships to maintain operational effectiveness across all target systems, Sarah replied, consulting the datapad she now carried everywhere. That will require full industrial mobilization of every remaining human colony, plus the conversion of captured alien shipyards to human production standards. Then we'll build 1,500 ships, Stone said with the calm certainty of a man who had already reshaped the galaxy through force of will. The industrial capacity exists, we just need to redirect it from civilian production to military necessity. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes entered the observation deck, her appearance even more transformed than Sarah's. The gentle xenobiologist had become something else entirely, a specialist in alien biology whose expertise was now focused on developing more efficient methods of species elimination. Her research into alien reproductive cycles and population dynamics had proven invaluable in designing targeted biological weapons that left worlds ready for human colonization. Admiral, I have the final analysis of Zephyrian genetic structure, she reported, handing Stone a sealed data cylinder. Their reproductive system has several vulnerabilities that we can exploit if we encounter similar species in Phase 2 operations. I've also completed the terraforming pathogen that will accelerate atmospheric conversion on their former worlds. Stone accepted the cylinder with a nod. Excellent work, Doctor. Your contributions to this operation have been invaluable. I'm recommending you for promotion to Director of Xenobiological Warfare Operations. Dr. Reyes smiled with genuine pleasure at the recognition. The transformation from peace-seeking scientist to architect of genocide had been gradual but complete. She had learned to see alien species, not as potential research partners, but as biological puzzles to be solved in service of human expansion. Thank you, Admiral. I've already begun preliminary analysis of the next target species. The crystalline hegemony has a silicon-based physiology that should be particularly vulnerable to resonance weapons. I estimate we can achieve complete population elimination within 72 hours of initial contact. Sarah listened to the casual discussion of mass murder with the detachment she had cultivated over the past 3 months. The moral framework she had once used to guide her decisions had been discarded along with her diplomatic credentials. In its place, she had adopted a new ethical system based on a single principle. Whatever ensured human survival was not just acceptable, but morally required. Captain Chen, Stone continued, I'm assigning you command of Battle Group 7 for the assault on the hegemony home systems. You'll have 50 ships and full operational autonomy to conduct the elimination as you see fit. Sarah felt a surge of pride at the assignment. Command of her own battle group represented not just professional advancement, but recognition that she had successfully adapted to the new reality of human existence in the galaxy. She would have the power to reshape entire star systems in service of humanity's expansion. I won't disappoint you, Admiral, she replied. Battle Group 7 will make short work of the crystalline hegemony. I have no doubt, Stone said. You've become everything I hoped you would when I first brought you aboard the Retribution. The diplomatic officer who believed in peaceful coexistence is gone. In her place stands a warrior worthy of humanity's destiny among the stars. Through the viewport, the last of the Zephyrian homeworld cities finished their death throes, the final fires consuming the libraries and art galleries that had once housed millions of years of alien culture. Soon, human terraforming equipment would begin the process of converting the planet into something suitable for human habitation. Children born on this world would grow up never knowing that an entire civilization had been erased to make room for their playgrounds and schools. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth Command, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. The former diplomatic officer had proven surprisingly adaptable to military operations, his language skills making him invaluable for intercepting and translating alien communications during combat operations. Stone frowned. Earth Command? I thought all legitimate command authority had been eliminated months ago. Unknown, sir. The transmission is using current military encryption protocols, and the source appears to be somewhere in the Sol system. Put it through, Stone ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing the image of a human woman in an admiral's uniform that Sarah didn't recognize. Her face was gaunt with exhaustion and stress, and her eyes held the haunted look of someone who had witnessed unspeakable horrors. This is Admiral Patricia Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, the woman began, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. I'm transmitting on all frequencies in hopes of reaching any human military unit still operating independently. Earth has fallen. I repeat, Earth has fallen. The observation deck fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. If Earth itself had been conquered, then humanity's situation was even more desperate than any of them had realized. The homeworld that had sent out diplomatic missions for 15 years had finally paid the ultimate price for its commitment to peaceful coexistence. The final assault began 6 hours ago, Admiral Morrison continued. Coalition forces numbering in the thousands of ships overwhelmed our orbital defenses and began systematic bombardment of all major population centers. Current estimates suggest that less than 10% of Earth's population survived the initial attack. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Earth had been home to nearly 12 billion humans, making it the most populous world in human space. If Morrison's estimates were accurate, then over 10 billion people had died in a single day, the largest single loss of human life in recorded history. All surviving human forces are to implement Protocol Omega immediately. Morrison's transmission continued. There can be no negotiation, no quarter given, and no mercy shown to any member species of the Coalition. The aliens have chosen total war. We will give them exactly what they asked for. The transmission cut off, leaving the observation deck in stunned silence. Protocol Omega was theoretical doctrine that had never been intended for actual implementation. It called for the complete extermination of all hostile alien species and the sterilization of their home systems to prevent any possibility of future retaliation. Well, Stone said finally, his voice carrying a note of grim satisfaction. It seems that Earth Command has finally come around to our way of thinking. Captain Chen, you have new orders. Battle Group 7 will proceed immediately to Sol System and rendezvous with Admiral Morrison's forces. Yes, sir, Sarah replied automatically. her mind already shifting into the tactical planning mode that had become second nature over the past 3 months. What about Phase 2 operations against the remaining coalition species? Phase 2 is now Phase 1, Stone said, turning back to the viewport where the dead Zephyrian homeworld continued its slow rotation. The aliens have made their choice. They wanted to exterminate humanity, and instead they've guaranteed their own extinction. We're going to hunt down every last member of every species that participated in this coalition, and we're going to make sure that when future galactic civilizations study this period in history, they understand what happens to species that threaten human survival. Dr. Reyes stepped forward, her expression bright with anticipation. Admiral, if we're implementing Protocol Omega across all coalition species, I'll need to expand my research team significantly. The biological warfare applications alone will require whatever you need, Doctor, Stone interrupted. Budget constraints are no longer a consideration. Neither are civilian oversight protocols or ethical review boards. We're fighting for the survival of our species, and that means everything else is secondary. Sarah looked out at the stars beyond the dead world, her mind already calculating the logistics of genocide on a galactic scale. Hundreds of star systems would need to be sterilized. Thousands of worlds would need to be rendered uninhabitable to alien life and prepared for human colonization. Trillions of alien beings would need to be eliminated to ensure that no coalition member survived to threaten human expansion. It was, she realized, exactly what humanity should have been doing from the beginning. The 15 years of diplomatic outreach had been wasted time that could have been spent building the military infrastructure necessary for galactic dominance. The aliens had never intended to coexist peacefully with humanity. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to strike. Admiral, she said, turning to face Stone with the expression of absolute certainty that marked all successful predators. Battle Group 7 requests permission to begin extended operations immediately. We have a galaxy to cleanse, Stone smiled, and for the first time since their first meeting, it was a smile of genuine warmth rather than grim satisfaction. Permission granted, Captain. Show the galaxy what happens when they threaten the children of Earth. As the human fleet began its transition to hyperspace, Sarah Chen took one last look at the dying Zephyrian homeworld. In a few hours, it would be nothing but another lifeless rock orbiting an unremarkable star. In a few years, it would be home to human children who would grow up believing that their species had always been the galaxy's dominant power. The age of human diplomacy was over. The age of human supremacy had begun. And when the last alien city burned under human weapons, when the last coalition fleet was destroyed by human warships, when the last hostile species was extinct and forgotten, then finally humanity would have the peace they had spent 15 years trying to negotiate. They would have peace because there would be no one left alive to threaten it.